Adrian was an engineer that liked to do everything himself, and he realized that his company was growing so fast that he needed help, right? God brought him somebody that had been newly retired in the same industry. Here to tell you a little bit about that and about change happening from the middle up. Will you please welcome Jack Desalliers. Thank you, Jack.
So, I have to confess I'm in 3 different minority groups in this meeting tonight.
Stay close to the mic.
One of them is I'm a Roman Catholic, probably a little bit different. I'm a key player. There's certainly more CEOs here and so forth. And the third one I'm really kind of nervous to admit, and I got even more nervous when I came in and I saw stones on the table. Because, yep, I'm a Patriots fan. Part of that is because I grew up 10 miles away from Gillette Stadium, but I'm pretty committed nonetheless. So I hope no stones will fly. So until Dave mentioned a couple things about me, just to flesh it out a little bit more. I spent about 40 years in the lighting business. It was my first real job after getting out of school. And I had the privilege of working for 2 of the 3 largest lighting companies in the world over that time. But 2014 rolled around and I decided I needed some time off, and I had earned it, convinced myself of that. After about 6 months, I realized that was the biggest mistake I ever made. I was bored to death. Couldn't fill in the days or anything, so I started doing some consulting work. And that was pretty rewarding, but the problem with it was an awful lot of travel, and I just didn't want to be away from my wife for that long and traveling overnight again and all of that. So the opportunity came up with Even Light, and I decided to go to work full time. And I told Adrian, I said, you know what, I really don't want to work 5 days a week. And he said, well, how about if you work 4.5? You can have every Friday afternoon off. He said, we got a lot to do. And I said, well, okay, that'll work. And I tell you that because it kind of sets the stage for the change and being a change agent. So having been in those large public companies for that amount of time, we learned that there were 3 things that you never talked about in your work group. You never talked about politics. You never talked about sex, and you never talked about religion. And that was just inbred in me. It was what being in a large public company at the director level was all about. You just had to abide by those rules. So Adrian and I had a dinner meeting, hadn't been hired yet. I knew it was the dinner meeting to make the offer, and we got that over with pretty quick. We had talked enough about it, and we shook hands, and he said, okay, now I have your first assignment. And he handed me our mission statement. And I read through the mission statement, and I got to the end, and it said, honoring God. And I said, Adrian, you can't put this in the mission statement. We can't do that. This is just, you don't talk about these 3 things. And he said, he looked at me squarely, and it's the only time he's ever given me a direct order that I can remember. And he said, it's staying in. And it did. So that was kind of the beginning of my indoctrination to what being a change agent in terms of having a sense of religion and a sense of God and bringing that into the workplace. And I'm a quite devout Roman Catholic, so it was easy enough to do. And it was a real adjustment for me, to say the least. So I tell you that as background. Dave talked about coincidences a little bit. So I started working at Even Light. My first job was to move the factory. We bought a new building. We went from about 14,000 square feet to 65,000 square feet. And we got it done, and it all worked quite well. And Adrian and Bill Lynch, who's the owner of our company, said they like to tell people that I dropped out of the sky into their lap just when they needed somebody like me most. And I came to realize after a little bit of the time that it wasn't me that dropped out of the sky for them. They dropped out of the sky for me. And it really made a huge difference in my life, and particularly bringing God into the workplace made a huge difference in my life. And to a point you made earlier, I thought that was a coincidence at first. And then I realized that wasn't a coincidence at all, okay? He had a hand in that and caused it to happen. So I'd like to think I've been a change agent in doing that. Adrian tells me I have. I want to talk a little bit about being a key player and what that's like. I think it's, if you don't have a key player, and if you're a CEO and you don't have a key player in C12, I would encourage you to do that. It's been great for both Adrian and I checked with him before I said this, but it's been great for both of us. The material, as you know, is great. We go through that, we meet afterwards. It's a common mission. Our people know Adrian's beliefs, my beliefs. We try to demonstrate them every day at work. Having that common base and the once a month meeting, going through the ministry segments and using those is really powerful. And if you're not using it, I would encourage you to do that. In closing, I'd like to thank Dave. I'd like to thank Adrian, who couldn't be here tonight, for the opportunity they've given me. It's really been a life-changing event. C12's been a big part of that. His hand in it's been a big part of it. So think about enlisting key players if you don't have them. If you do have them, think about getting more of them. It's great for the key player. It's a great opportunity.